So I wasn't really sure how to start this video, just because I went to the book doctor recently, and I've been telling the book doctor, I was just being like, look, I keep buying books before I'm able to finish the first book. I just have this tendency of wandering between stories and ideas and worlds and collecting perspectives, and the book doctor just looked at me and he was just like, right. And I was like, look, you're doing a lot of writing and saying right over there, book doctor, but you're not giving me any definitions. I need to understand what it is that I have. And the book doctor just looked at me and they were like, So you say you have a tendency of wandering between worlds. I'm pretty sure I just said that to you, Mr. Book Doctor, but sure, continue. And it's not just worlds, it's stories. And so, did you say libraries? And I was like, look, Book Doctor, I didn't say libraries. I said stories, ideas, and worlds. And then the book doctor turned around and said to me, look. I hear you saying stories, ideas, and worlds, but it all sounds like things that you can collectively find in a library. And I was like, all right, get to the point. What is the story here, Mr. Book Doctor? And finally, after a long back and forth of me trying to get this out of the book doctor and the book doctor writing me round in circles and giving me different definitions and different synopses and different metaphors and different similes, I was like, get to the point, book doctor. What is it that I have? And he took off his glasses, looked at me square in the face, dead in my eyes, and said, sir, I believe that what you have is narrative nomadism. And I was like, excuse me? That can't be a real thing. Like, me? I don't have this narrative nomadism. And he was like, look, sometimes it may be called story wanderer. Sometimes you may be called a narrative portaler. You may even be called a library explorer. And I was like, hang on, there you go with the library thing again. And I was like, look, I haven't been to a library in a very long time. I just go to book dealerships, actually. And he was like, well, the library might be a good solace for you. And I was like, hey, hang on. You're meant to be giving me this definition for what it is that I supposedly have prescribed me with something. He's like, look, I can only prescribe you books. I am a book doctor after all. And I was like, all right, cool. That makes sense. But back to this narrative nomadism. Is it kind of like digital nomadism? The book doctor said, yeah, it's kind of similar between digital nomad, you could say. He continued and told me how it's kind of similar to a digital nomad, but more of a narrative nomad. And yeah, I don't wander from place to place. I wander from story to story. And I left the book doctor. Funny thing is, the more I say book doctor, I can't help but thinking, what's that song? The Witch Doctor. And for some reason, the only version of that song that I can think about in my head when I think of they tell the witch doctor, I can't think of the words, but the only version of that song that comes into my head when I think of that song is the one from the Chipmunk movie. Don't ask me why, but that's the connection. And where was I? I was leaving the book doctors, that's right. When I left the book doctors, I got home and I was looking at my prescription and it just said, digital nomadism, sometimes called story wanderer, library explorer, perspective collector. And I thought, all right, I'm all of those, so what are you prescribing me? Stories, books. And where do I get these books? All right, yeah, okay. So the book doctor basically just prescribed me books, and he said that I can fill my prescription from my nearest independent book dealership. And I was like, all right, cool. Do the book dealerships know about these prescriptions? And the book doctor was like, no, it's completely fictitious, Corey. Me, the book doctor, you created me. And I was like, all right, steady on, man. No need to get all real on me. So yeah, narrative nomadism. The book doctor didn't prescribe me with anything other than books. And I have a stack of books here. So what are the symptoms? So the symptoms of narrative nomadism, which is what led me to go to the book doctor to begin with, is the fact of I'm constantly wandering between bookshops. There's this independent, I call them bookshops. I misspoke. Book dealerships. And there's two different types of book dealerships. There's the independent book dealerships. Those are the ones fighting the good fight. Then there's the big chain dealerships, like your Waterstones. Nothing against Waterstones. I used to go into Waterstones all the time and buy books. I haven't been to Waterstones in a very long time. Maybe I'll go back one time. But I'm into my independent bookshops, book dealerships right now. So, you have to watch out. You have to support your local independent book dealership. But the big chain ones, support them. There's books there. But, where do your allegiance lie? It's kind of like that question from my last video. Are you team ebook or team physical book? There's no betweens. You have to pick a side. I'm kidding. So yeah, symptoms include. So this is for anyone out there that's watching this video and thinking, hang on, I haven't been to a book doctor before. And look, you don't need to go to a book doctor. What you do need to do is wait for these symptoms, hear the symptoms out, You may have this narrative nomadism, this perspective collectorism, library explorerism, library explorerism. You may too be a story wanderer. So you should stay tuned and find out about these symptoms so you can self-prescribe yourself a book too. So do you constantly wander between book dealerships? May they be independent dealerships or big chain dealerships? Are you looking for stories everywhere? May it be under a rock? Are you shouting out stories in the street and someone's looking at you or filming you on their phone and they're like, hang on, why is this guy screaming stories? It's because he's looking for stories, or she is looking for stories, or they are looking for stories. But hey, are you constantly reading the blurb just to see what the book looks like? Just, you're curious. You're like, oh, I'll just take a little gander of this book here. You start reading the blurb, you're like, oh, well, this actually sounds pretty interesting. I might have to pick this up. But then before you know it, you're wandering around the dealership, the book dealership, and you're like, oh, hang on, I've got a stack of books here. How much is this going to cost me? And you're like, I'm sure it's fine. Maybe. And then you start debating between books. You're like, hang on, wait, I do have 6 books here. Maybe I should put one of these books or 2 of these or maybe 4 of them, these books down. I don't need to buy all 6 in this one sitting. If I buy 2 today, it means that I have another reason to come back to the book dealership to buy 2 more books another day. You can weigh it up, split it up, debate with yourself, set up conditions so you can, prolong the book buy-in. But ultimately, you're going to buy those 6 books, whether it's all in one book dealership searching or book dealership hunting, whether it's all in that one hunt for the book that you didn't know you wanted until you got into the dealership and you were like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do you see that book right there? Talking to no one but yourself. Do you see that book over there? I think that book's going home with me today. And you're like, how do you know? I'm going to pick up that book, I'm going to read the blurb, and it's going to hook me. And if it doesn't, I'm going to put it down and find the next blurb to hook me. So, are you like that? Do you find stories in conversations? Do you find stories in podcasts? Do you find stories in YouTube videos? Do you find stories on the train? Are you in the cafe and you're just, typing away and then suddenly something happens and there's a whole story in the cafe? You weren't part of the story. You were outside of the story, watching the story happen, but there's still a story was happening in your vicinity. You experienced the story. And maybe you're a writer and you're like, oh my gosh, this inspires me for my next book. This inspires me for my next play. This inspires my next poem. But you were there and you collected it. You wrote it down in a notebook. You penciled in that memory into your mind. Yeah. As a narrative nomad, you can collect anything that pertains to a story. You find yourself falling down rabbit holes connected to books or stories or ideas or whatever. I mean, the rabbit holes are absolutely everywhere. Same with the stories, same with the narratives. And you just get captivated by wandering between all of them and wondering, where do I begin? I was even thinking while I was writing the notes for this video, even my notebook, like this notebook here is a narrative, a story. I'm writing notes for the story that I want to tell in this video. No script, just notes. But I can look at these notes and create a story. And that's part of the collection that I'm building up with all of these. Oh, this label, fucking hell. Building up these narratives. Not these narratives, these stories that sometimes I find the stories and sometimes the stories find me. Which brings me on to the broader term, the literary medical condition. Because after I got home from the book doctors, the book doctor asked me to come back in for another visit. And I was curious. I was like, all right, I'll come in. for a second visit. You've already prescribed me a book, but you didn't tell me what book I had to buy. But no, that's fine. I'll figure it out myself. I'll file my prescription at my nearest independent book dealership. But obviously the independent book dealership has no partnership with my book doctor. So I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to file it. But hey, I went back. I went back to see the book doctor. Book doctor was there. I was like, yo, man, what's going on? Like, why did you call me back in? You already told me about this narrative nomadism and told me I was similar to digital nomads, but it's more like literary based and stories, and you're wandering between stories. And I basically gave you the definition, and then you just verbatim waffled it back to me in a question form. And he was like, still writing his notes. And I was like, all right, enough of these notes. You called me back in. I didn't expect you to be writing notes like this was another session. He was just like, that's why I called you back in, Corey. And I was like, all right, what is this about? So he sighed and said, this could be serious. And I was like, what do you mean it could be serious? Like, you've already told me about this narrative nomadism and how I'm wandering between stories and libraries and ideas. And you gave me the idea about the libraries. It wasn't, all right, what's going on? He said, you might want to sit down. All right. Luckily for this video, I am sat down already, but in my fictitious imagined story with me going to see a book doctor, I'm stood up in his book doctor in office, and I'm about to sit down in the chair facing his, what are they called, desks? Is that what desk? I think that's what it is. Hey, it's a desk. So I'm sat there across from my book doctor, and he says, I think you have ABAS. And I was like, wait, hang on. First you call it narrative nomadism, and now you're talking about ABAS. What on earth does this acronym even stand for? And he goes, all right, it stands for Acute Book Acquisition Syndrome. And I was like, oh, what? I don't acquire books. I don't acquire books. I just have a stack of books. You don't even know if they're all mine. Okay, all these books are mine, but that's besides the point. The book doctor couldn't see the stack of books because the book doctor wasn't. You get the point, right? We're in the book doctor office right now. I'm sat across from the book doctor. The book doctor's talking. And the book doctor goes, yeah, man, you've got acute book acquiring syndrome. Sorry, acute book acquisition syndrome. And I was like, so what does that mean? And he said, look, do you sometimes have the urge to collect books? And I said, what do you mean by collect? I'm buying books in the aim to read them. And he said, that's what I mean by collecting them. I mean, you're buying them before you finish reading the first one. And I was like, yeah, no, because that book is meant to be the next book I read. Yeah, right, but until you read the book that you buy to be your next book, and then the book that you buy to be your next book, you understand you're collecting those books. All right, let's agree to disagree. I'm a collector of books. All right, I say I read them, and you say I collect them, but all right. And he was like, if you're buying books faster than you're reading them, it definitely means you have acute book Acquisition Syndrome. And I was like, all right, tell me more. Like, it's like, your books to read later pile, does it keep stacking up? I was like, yeah, of course, because the books to read later, if I don't buy them now, then how would I remember to buy them when I want to read them? That's silly. He's like, yeah, no, sure, I get what you're saying, but this is why I called you in, Corey, for the second time. You have acute book acquisition syndrome, and there's no cure for it at this current time. There's no cure. What? Yeah, he was like, no, there's no cure, there's no medication, there's no treatment for it. The only thing I can prescribe you is a book. And I said, this again, another book, but are you even going to tell me what book you're going to prescribe me? He was like, that's the thing. With narrative nomadism, you're already wandering between stories. I don't even need to tell you what book. You're going to find the book you're looking for. I was like, I guess you're right. I'm always finding books that I didn't know that I wanted until, I saw it in the bookshop and I read the blurb and, I see now. I get it. And I just want to go through some exhibits, for example, just to prove my point of this wandering between stories. So, Exhibit A. If you watch my last video where I accidentally became an ebook reader, you know that I forgot my headphones, I forgot my book, and I was on that train for 40 minutes in complete silence, and it wasn't silence, I could hear everything going on the train, and just not wanting to focus on absolutely any sound, but I could hear all the sounds happening. So then I went and searched for a story. I needed something to read. I could have read a news story, but it wouldn't have been as captivating to keep my time going. And I think it's funny because the first book on my pile that I have here, The Midnight Library, right? When I saw this book in the ebook store, I looked at it, I read the blurb, and I thought, I'm not really feeling this book. This book doesn't seem like the type of book I want to read for my ebook journey. So I put it down, I gave it a miss. And then, I think, when did I go to the bookshop last? Sorry, the book dealership. I keep messing these terms up, bookshop, book dealership. I prefer the dealership because, these book dealers, they like to call themselves sellers, but they're not selling you books. They're dealing you stories. So I believe them to be more book dealers, and that's why it's a book dealership. They deal in stories. They don't just sell you books. That's I can't think of the word. It's gone. Anyway, back to the Midnight Library. Exhibit A, story. So this story here, like I said, I saw it in the ebook store. I didn't want it. I went to the book dealership on Friday, just gone, and saw it. I read the blurb, and I was like, yo, this sounds like an interesting book, I might have to pick this up. Might have to pick this book up. So I did. I picked it up. And I haven't read it yet. It's on my to read later pile or next or whatever. But it's here, And yeah. Exhibit B, The Forgotten Book. Now this one was a bit interesting. I didn't expect to still have this book. So this book here is Love in Color. And I found this book. This is a found story, I guess. So I found this book on the train, and it was coming up to the last stop, and I remember finding the book, picking it up, and I was like, oh shit, is there a bookmark in it? I flicked through, there was no bookmark. But I got to the last page on this book, and there's a post-it note stuck here, and it says, Reason 12. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Love is the best aftercare. To add color, to soften the blow. 12 reasons to live and be happy. Now, I have no idea what this book is about. Maybe someone knows that's read this in the comments. You can let me know. But from reading the cover, you know, mythical tales from around the world retold. Sounds interesting. And yeah, like I said, I found it on the train. And when I found it, I didn't expect to take it home with me. I remember picking it up, putting it in my bag, and I was like, when I get out of the train, I'll just like go to like the station entrance, whatever, and be like, yo, I found this book. I want to hand it in. But what ended up happening is I put it in my bag, and I guess I must have got distracted by something else, another thought in my head, or some music that I was listening to, or something that must have happened. And I completely forgot that I had put the book in my bag. And I just kept going. And I only remembered that I had this book in my bag when I got home, and I reached in, I was taking stuff out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I still got this book. I didn't mean to have it. I was meant to hand it in. So there's that. I got this wandering story, and it also, just from flicking to this last page and the fact there was no bookmark in here anyway, it made me wonder about the previous owner of this book. Like, did the previous owner leave the book on the carriage on purpose because they were finished with the book and they were trying to kind of leave the stories for someone else to find? Like kind of a wandering book, kind of like someone finishes it, they leave it somewhere, and someone else picks it up and they read it, and then it's ever continuous, and you never know who started the chain. That would be a cool premise, a cool thing to do. I don't know if I could set up something like that, like read a book, leave it somewhere, set up a whole, I don't know, idea for a future thing. But yeah. Did they leave it there for someone to find and someone to pick up and read? Or was it like a complete accident? They dropped the book, they left it there by accident. What's this reason 12 and 12 reasons thing about? I'm so curious, but I guess really I won't ever find out until I read this book. And then maybe the sticky note on the back might make sense, or maybe it's connected to something completely different. I have no idea. But that's Exhibit B. And Exhibit C. I went looking in the book dealership for Brave New World. But instead of finding Brave New World, which I do actually have now, I was so excited when I got this. It's part of this story, but hey. So I was looking for Brave New World. That was the story I was looking for, or the book that I was looking for, Brave New World. So I went into the book dealership, rushed in, saw Brave New World, didn't see the revisited part, or maybe I did, and I thought, maybe this is just like a revisited copy, like of the original. Didn't question it too much. Went to the counter, bought it, took it home, only to find out when I looked at it, I was like, revisited? What is this? It's only when I'm looking at the back and I'm like, also see Brave New World. And I was like, what do you mean also see? This is not Brave New World? So yeah, I revisited it. I was like, no. So then after getting Brave New World revisited, I had to revisit the book dealership. And I was like, guys, look, do you have Brave New World? I asked those book dealers, I was like, do you have Brave New World? I want this book. I'm looking for it. And they were like, yeah, I'm sure we had. And they started looking around, and I was like, look, maybe you have revisited, because that's what I have, and that's what I bought from here before, thinking it was Brave New World. Got home, looked at it, about to read it, and thinking, no, it's not the book I'm looking for. They were like, okay, cool, we don't have Brave New World currently, but we can order it in for you. And I was like, fantastic, that's great. And they were like, it'll probably be in on Friday. And I was like, fantastic. That's fantastic news. They're like, let's write your name down, put your number down. We'll call you when it's in. And one of the book dealers was like, although you'll probably be here on Friday anyway. And I was like, you're right, I probably will be. This Friday is my day because I can buy some books on that day. It's my day. Otherwise, I'm buying books every day. But if I like fix it to one day, then I can splurge, you know, or just have a look for that one book that I didn't know I was looking for. Anyway, so I ordered the book. And as you can see from my excitement from before, Brave New World came in. But that's not the story. The best part of the story was the fact that I was in the bookshop / book dealership, the independent book dealership. That's where I was at. I was at the independent book dealership. And when I was looking around, it was on the same Friday when I found the Midnight Library. I was looking around. I had this book, The Midnight Library, in my hand, and I was just looking around other books, and I was like, look, I need to leave here. There was another thing I came here for, and one of the book dealers came over, and they were like, oh, Corey, you're here. And I was like, Brave New World came, and I was like, yes! Did a little dance, celebration, arms in the air and that, and I was like, yes, I'm so happy this book is finally here. And then she said, she was like, I was going to call you, but you're already here. And Brave New World literally just came into the store about 30 minutes before you came in. And I was like, it was meant to be. Lucky my lunchtime is around that time, so I was able to come in. So boom, Brave New World Revisited. I'm gonna read these at some point later in the future. But for now, they're just part of my collection. But not that I am collecting these books, they're like part of the collection for me to read. So really, they're in the to read later pile as opposed to the part of the collection pile because I haven't read them. But obviously, you understand because, you know, you're like story wanderers too. Exhibit D. Now, Exhibit D is the poetry book Oh Knowles, poems by Knowles Nafansky, and a book called Empire of Normality that was gifted to me by Knowles Nafansky when I was on his podcast, Make Poetry Weird Again. Episode will be coming out soon. I believe I need to finish editing it, but it will be out soon. Anyway, Knowles, we had a great time. We had a nice chat. His podcast is, he basically has a poet on there and we talk about poetry. What else? Like, you know, it was kind of cool because I think it was the first podcast that I've been on where someone's interviewing me. Usually I'm on podcasts. I have my own podcast called My Opinion Means Nothing, where I interview creative people and creative friends that I know, or just anyone that has opinion, really. You can check that out on wherever you check podcasts from. And yeah, so Knowles gave me these two books that he gifted to me, and these books that he gifted to me, I also gifted a blind date with a book to him, so that it was part of my whole thing where I was on his show, but I wanted to give the gift of storytelling. I wanted to give the gift of storytelling, you see. So that's what I was doing. I shared the gift of storytelling with him. I gave him a book, and he gave me his poetry book, and he also gave me The Empire of Normality. And I gave him, the book Blind Date. And it just shows that I am stories travel between people, as well as me traveling between different worlds and wandering between stories. Which brings me on to Exhibit E. While I was tidying up my room, I was rediscovering the books that I had in my room. I found this book, The Empire of Normality. I found this book here, The Big Life, which is kind of like, I went to this musical, it was like a ska musical called The Big Life. And it was at the Stratford East Theatre. When did we go to see it? We went in February. It was playing like between February and March in 2024. And while they were doing the show, they had like the book, which is the play, and obviously I wanted that. And I also got what did I get? Program here. Anyway, I found this book while I was tidying up my room, and I also found this other book here, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, but my brother gifted it to me for Christmas one year, and I'm pretty excited to check it out. But that's just part of the exhibits, showing that, I wander between narratives. I am a narrative nomad. And through this journey, I had a realization that maybe narrative nomadism isn't just collecting books. As the book doctor told me, it's also the collecting of ideas and stories and wandering through different libraries, and maybe it's also collecting moments, because the moments that you have, the moments that you create with the books, or the things that connect you to the stories that you create or that you make or that shapes you, that moment is what makes it possible. And every book reminds me of where I found it, who gave it to me, why I brought it, what happened in my life that brought me to that book. And it's the same with those moments. You're reminded when you touch something of that moment, when you found it, when you bought it. And it all brings back the story. And a bigger thought is that books is only one example. As a narrative nomad, you could be collecting films, you could be collecting music, you could be collecting conversations, you could be collecting poems, you could be collecting podcasts, you could be collecting memories, ideas, interviews. It could be absolutely anything that connects you to a story is a narrative nomad. And it brings me to the end. The question I have for you: Does anyone else have acute book acquisition syndrome, or is it just me? And what random story led you to your favorite book? And other than that, I'll call that the end. So if you've enjoyed this video, thank you for watching. And if you haven't, thank you for hate watching. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye. Oh, I didn't have any water in this episode. And now I did.